When the Anunnaki arrived on Earth, they established kingship, and this is the beginning of everything. Later, they encountered primitive hominids walking on the high plains. By blending their essence with that of the primates, they created the first humans. Then disputes began, and so did the wars. Anu, the father of the gods, brought forth the siblings Enki, Enlil, and Ninmah. And from then on, they ruled the earth. But later their offspring continued their rivalries, and their stories can be found in various mythologies around the world. To understand who we are, it's essential to understand who they are. And we can only understand them by learning their story in the oldest mythologies and the most ancient historical documents. In this video, continuing the work of understanding Mesopotamian mythology and the gods and goddesses of Babylon, we will delve deeper into who Marduk, Ninurta, Ishkur, and Nannar are. Before we proceed, it's essential to understand a crucial point. The complete story of the Anunnaki originates from Mesopotamian tablets and 19th century archaeological discoveries. Subsequently, studies by various specialists developed in different directions. In this way, it's possible to establish a genealogical relationship among the different entities that populate our mythologies. From these studies, the ancient astronaut theory emerges. This theory arises from the perception and understanding that we are dealing with the same beings across different mythologies, and that our religions have historical and theological origins that can be traced back to these beings who descended from the heavens in periods predating humanity's existence. In my view, the Anunnaki are indeed an extraterrestrial race, or perhaps even more than one. And also, in my opinion, the Anunnaki are directly involved in the origin of religion and in all of humanity's religions. However, it's essential to make this clear. This is my idea, my theories, and my conclusions. Zecharia Sitchin's studies in his books explore these connections. However, when Sitchin chose to tell the complete story of the Anunnaki, certain decisions had to be made regarding the direction of studies and where conclusions would be led based on specific discoveries. When we compare historical documents and archaeological discoveries with Zecharia Sitchin's studies and academic research, we find certain differences, and I consider this extremely important. Let's get to know who Marduk is, the one who, according to Zecharia Sitchin, became Ra, and later Amon or Amen-Ra in Egypt, proclaiming himself as the one and only true God. This, in turn, resulted in the use of the nuclear bomb in the Sinai Peninsula. Historically and according to traditional scholarship, Marduk is originally an obscure deity from the 3rd millennium BCE, who emerged as the preeminent god of the Mesopotamian pantheon by the 1st millennium. He became the patron god of Babylon, where the Ziggurat Etemenanki, also known as the Temple of the Foundation of Heaven and Earth, symbolized his divine authority. His name became synonymous with Bel, the Akkadian term for Lord, reflecting his supreme status during this period. Marduk's rise to prominence is closely linked to Babylon's growing political and cultural influence, making him one of the most complex figures in ancient Mesopotamian religion. Marduk's origins are shrouded in mystery, with little clarity about his initial functions. However, his association with incantations can be traced back to the Old Babylonian period, possibly indicating a syncretic connection with the god Asaluhi, who was linked to Eridu and to the god Enki. Eridu was the cult center of Enki. This association may have been deliberate, aiming to enhance Marduk's power by aligning him with Enki, a deity not originally part of the Nippur pantheon. Nippur, as we saw in previous videos, was one of the cities where Enlil was venerated as the patron deity. Marduk's religious importance grew alongside Babylon's political expansion, particularly during the Kassite dynasty and the Neo-Babylonian period, when he reached his zenith. One of the most famous Mesopotamian texts, the Enuma Elish, often called the Babylonian Epic of Creation, details Marduk's ascension to the head of the pantheon. In this narrative, Marduk defeats the primordial goddess Tiamat, representing chaos, and creates the world from her remains. His victory leads the gods to bestow 50 names upon him, signifying his supremacy and replacing Enlil as the chief deity. This epic not only highlights Marduk's strength, but also solidifies his central role in Mesopotamian cosmology and theology, with the creation story serving primarily as a framework for his rise to power. Some scholars suggest that Marduk's rise as the main god of Mesopotamia is associated with his invention as the greatest of all gods. There are various tablets that point to actions identified in other texts with other deities, which in turn are sometimes attributed to Marduk. From a historical perspective, it is possible to interpret that later scribes came to recognize Marduk as the supreme deity they worshipped, thus replacing other gods' names with his. When examining these actions through the lens of the ancient astronaut theory, it is possible to consider that Marduk himself may have encouraged this development. According to Zecharia Sitchin, Marduk is a planet described in the Enuma Elish text. In the episode in which Marduk faces Tiamat, Sitchin interprets that the planet Marduk is, in fact, the planet Nibiru. In his view, Marduk, considering himself the greatest of the gods, replaced the name of his home planet with his own. In addition to the Enuma Elish, another significant text, Ludlul Bel Nemeki, meaning "Let me praise the Lord of Wisdom," presents a different aspect of Marduk's nature. Often compared to the biblical story of Job, this composition depicts Marduk as both a benevolent and destructive deity, capable of granting or withholding aid. The poem follows a sufferer's trials and eventual redemption by Marduk, illustrating the god's complex relationship with humanity. Unlike the grand cosmic scale of the Enuma Elish, this text offers a more personal, introspective portrayal of Marduk, emphasizing themes of suffering, divine justice, and redemption. Marduk's genealogy and syncretisms further reveal his intricate role in the pantheon. Early on, he was associated with Asaluhi, the god of incantations, and Tutu, the patron deity of Borsippa. Despite some early sources distinguishing Asaluhi and Marduk as separate entities, they eventually merged, strengthening Marduk's ties to Eridu and Enki's traditions. Marduk is traditionally identified as the son of Enki, emphasizing his lineage within the Eridu pantheon. His wife, Sarpanit, and son, Nabu, further cement Marduk's familial ties in Babylonian religion, with Nabu eventually becoming his co-regent. Marduk's primary cult center was Babylon, which rose to become the religious and political center of Mesopotamia. His main temple, Esagil, meaning temple whose top is raised, stood alongside Etemenanki, the towering ziggurat that inspired the biblical Tower of Babel. During the New Year's festival, rituals at the Akitu house involved recitations of the Enuma Elish before Marduk's statue, symbolizing his authority over creation and kingship. Marduk's worship was not confined to Babylon alone. He was also venerated in other cities like Sippar, Borsippa, and Nippur, though his influence in Assyria remained limited. The historical record of Marduk begins to solidify during the Old Babylonian period, reflecting his growing importance, especially in northern and central Babylonia. His status continued to rise throughout the second millennium BCE, notably under the Kassite dynasty, which adopted Babylon as its capital. The invasion of Babylonia by the Elamites led to the capture of Marduk's divine statue, which was eventually retrieved by Nebuchadnezzar I of the second dynasty of Isin, marking a pivotal moment in Babylonian religious history. The Neo-Babylonian period saw Marduk and Babylon at their peak, with monumental architecture, such as the Ishtar Gate, further symbolizing his divine supremacy. Marduk's iconography is characterized by the spade, his primary symbol, and the Mushusu, a snake dragon often depicted in Babylonian art. The spade was already associated with him during the Old Babylonian period, while the Mushusu became prominent in later representations, such as the glazed brick reliefs of Babylon. Few anthropomorphic depictions of Marduk exist, with most found on cylinder seals. The etymology of Marduk's name remains debated. Written logographically as Di-Amar-Ud, it means calf of the sun. Marduk's identity is firmly tied to Enki's tradition, emphasizing his association with wisdom, creation, and cosmic order. Additionally, he was symbolically linked to the number 50, representing his usurpation of Enlil's position as the head of the pantheon. His name evolved through various linguistic forms, including Maru Tu'uk in Akkadian and Merodach in biblical texts, further illustrating his far-reaching influence across cultures and eras. In the interpretation of ancient alien ideas and theories, Marduk is not exactly a god to be worshipped with statues and reverence. He was a god to be recognized as a being and not just a statue. Being the son of Enki, Marduk was the heir of Enki, who was the son of Anu, the supreme god of the heavens. It's interesting to observe, and here we have an excellent topic of study for those interested in biblical parallels and the assembly of the historical puzzle surrounding our past, that in the Bible, Yahweh proclaims the downfall of Marduk, known as Merodach in those texts. In Jeremiah, it reads, "The word which Yahweh spoke concerning Babylon, concerning the land of the Chaldeans, by means of Jeremiah the prophet, tell among the nations and announce it. Lift up a banner, announce it, do not suppress it. Say, Babylon is seized, Bel is put to shame, Merodach is dismayed. Her fetishes are put to shame. Her idol clods are dismayed." Ninurta, also known as Ningirsu in earlier Sumerian tradition, is a prominent deity in Mesopotamian mythology, associated with agriculture, healing, warfare, and law. As the son of Enlil, Ninurta's maternal lineage varies depending on the myth. In Lugal-E, his mother is Ninmah, renamed Ninhursag, while in Angim-Dima, Ninlil is identified as his mother. Ninurta's consort is usually the healing goddess Gula, though in his Ningirsu form, he is paired with Bau, a deity primarily worshipped in Lagash. Initially, Ninurta was revered as a god of farming and healing, believed to cure sickness and repel demons. However, as Mesopotamia's focus shifted toward militarization, he evolved into a warrior god while retaining his agricultural attributes. His primary cult center was the Eshumesha temple in Nippur, but he was also deeply associated with Lagash, where King Gudea of Lagash rebuilt his temple, the Ninu, around 2144 to 2124 BCE. Ninurta later gained favor with the Assyrians, who honored him as a fierce protector, a guarantor of oaths and punishments for violators. In the epic Lugal-E, Ninurta battles the demon Asag, using his enchanted mace Sharur, and reshapes the landscape by creating mountains from the stones of the vanquished warriors, channeling the rivers for irrigation. This narrative combines his roles as both a warrior and an agricultural deity. In another significant myth, Ninurta confronts the Anzu bird, a creature that steals the Tablet of Destinies from Enlil, disrupting the divine order. Ninurta's eventual victory restores cosmic balance, reinforcing his position as a defender of divine authority. The tale, popular among Assyrian scholars, illustrates Ninurta's bravery and loyalty to his father, Enlil. Ninurta's association with agriculture is also evident in the Sumerian Georgica, a text that offers detailed guidance on farming practices, from planting and tending crops to pest control. This blend of martial and agrarian traits is a key aspect of Ninurta's character, underscoring his versatility as both a nurturer and a destroyer. The god's symbols include a plow, a perched bird, and possibly the winged disc, which some scholars speculate was initially associated with Ninurta before being linked to Ashur and Utu Shamash. In astrological terms, Ninurta was identified with Mercury in the Mul.Apinkama, a Babylonian astronomical compendium, though he was later associated with Saturn, while Mercury became linked to Nabu. Ninurta also held potential inspiration for the biblical Nimrod, the mighty hunter of Genesis, due to shared attributes of strength and hunting prowess. The ruins of Kalhu, where Ninurta's temple once stood, were later known in Arabic as Namrud, further supporting the connection between the deity and Nimrod. Ninurta's importance in Assyrian royal ideology is evident from the names of several kings, such as Tukulti-Ninurta I and Adad-Nirari II, who attributed their military successes to Ninurta's favor. Ninurta's role as a supporter of the Assyrian kings continued through the 9th century BCE, as seen in Ashurnasirpal II's inscriptions crediting him for victories and dedicating his exploits to the god. Even after Kalhu ceased to be the Assyrian capital, Ninurta remained a respected deity, with legal documents invoking him as a guarantor of oaths and punishments for violators. Ninurta's is often depicted in stone reliefs, such as those from the temple at Kalhu, showing him in combat, especially against the Anzu bird. His mythological narratives, like Ninurta's exploits, emphasize his strength, strategic skills, and organizational abilities, as he not only defeats enemies, but also reshapes the physical world to benefit humanity. This aspect aligns with Ninurta's role in establishing order and justice, themes that extend to his characterization as a deity of law and scribal knowledge. The persistence of Ninurta's cult is evident from discoveries at Girsu, where a 5,000 years old ritual site dedicated to Ningirsu was uncovered in 2020, revealing artifacts linked to his worship. The 2023 identification of the Eninu temple at Girsu further highlights his long-standing significance in Mesopotamian religious history. Despite the decline of his prominence with the rise of other gods like Marduk and Nabu, Ninurta's legacy as a multifaceted deity of agriculture, war, and cosmic order endures as a central figure in Mesopotamian mythology. Ishkur, known as Adad in Akkadian, is the Mesopotamian storm god associated with both the life-giving and destructive aspects of rain and floods. His character embodies the ambivalence of storms, which can either benefit or devastate humanity. This dual nature is reflected in the Sumerian and Akkadian traditions, with Ishkur and Adad being seen as a warlike figure capable of unleashing nature's fury, as well as a deity of rain who nurtures crops and promotes fertility. The differing emphasis on his roles can be attributed to regional agricultural needs. In southern Mesopotamia, he is often seen as a destructive force, while in the north, he is primarily regarded as a bringer of life-giving rains. Ishkur's power extends to the battlefield, with his storms symbolizing his might in war. In Sumerian hymns, he is portrayed as destroying rebellious lands, while Akkadian texts depict him as overwhelming enemies with his elemental strength. His association with justice and divination further underscores his influence, reinforcing his role as a god of order and fairness. The genealogy of Ishku-Adad varies across traditions. He is often considered the son of An-Anu, the sky god, though Sumerian texts sometimes identify Enlil as his father. The storm god's consorts also differ, with Medimsha recognized as Ishkur's wife in Sumerian tradition, while Adad's Akkadian counterpart is paired with Shala. His children, as listed in the god list, an equal sign Anum, include 2 sons and 3 daughters, though their roles and attributes remain largely unspecified. The syncretism of Ishkur with other storm gods, such as the North Babylonian Wer, Hurrian Teshub, and Hittite Luwian Tarhun. This deity is also identified with Baal in Canaanite texts, revealing a broader cultural connection that emphasizes his role as a central storm god across the Near East. This merging of deities likely facilitated the spread of Adad's cult throughout Mesopotamia and beyond. Ishkur-Adad's main cult centers spanned Mesopotamia, with the temple Iyugal-Gal-La, which means House of Great Storms in Karkar, serving as an early site of worship. In Babylon, his temple was known as the House of Abundance, and he had sanctuaries in other major cities, including Sippar, Nippur, Ur, and Uruk. In Assur, the house which hears prayers was transformed into a double temple for Adad and Anu by King Shamshi-Adad I, illustrating his prominence in Assyrian worship. Adad's main cult center during the Neo-Assyrian period was at Kurba'il, though temples dedicated to him existed throughout Assyrian cities like Kalhu and Nineveh. The earliest attestations of Ishkur date back to the mid-3rd millennium BCE, appearing in god lists and cult sites like Lagash and Adab. By the Old Babylonian period, Ishkur-Adad had become one of the great gods of the Babylonian pantheon, revered for both his creative and destructive powers. Texts like Enki and the World Order praise him as the bringer of plenty, while the Atrahasis epic emphasizes his destructive potential, depicting Adad as the force behind droughts, famine, and the Great Flood intended to annihilate humanity. In Assyria, Adad held a high rank among the gods, evident from the royal inscriptions that regularly invoke his favor. For instance, Ashurnasirpal II refers to himself as beloved of Adad, who is almighty among the gods. Even as Babylonian religion evolved, Adad continued to receive worship, maintaining a presence in major cities into the Hellenistic period. Iconographically, Ishkur-Adad is depicted wielding lightning bolts and standing on or beside a bull or lion dragon. The lion-dragon symbol, common in early art, was later complemented by the bull, which became more prevalent from the Ur-III period onwards. His name in Sumerian, represented by the sign for wind, remains enigmatic, while the Akkadian Adad derives from the Semitic root HDD, meaning to thunder. The enduring legacy of Ishkur-Adad lies in his embodiment of the storm's dual nature, both as a force of nourishment and as a bringer of devastation, mirroring the unpredictable power of the natural world. His influence extended into divination, justice, and warfare, making him a multifaceted deity whose presence was felt across the spectrum of Mesopotamian life and beyond. Nanar, also known as Suin or Sin in Akkadian, is the Mesopotamian moon god revered as the tutelary deity of the city of Ur. Beyond his local ties, Nanar's influence extended across the broader Mesopotamian pantheon, making him one of the major deities in the ancient world. His presence is noted in early god lists, such as the Farah god list, where he ranks alongside prominent deities like An, Enlil, Inanna, and Enki. His significance is further emphasized in texts like Nanasuan's Journey to Nippur, where he presents the first fruit offerings to Enlil, highlighting his reverential role within the pantheon. The crescent moon serves as Nanar's primary symbol, derived from the visual similarity between the waxing crescent and a bull's horns. This association positions Nanar as a cowherd deity, best exemplified in the herds of Nana, which details his relationship with cattle. His role as a fertility god is also linked to the lunar cycle, which mirrors the menstrual cycle. This connection is evident in birth-related rituals like a cow of sin, where Nanar aids in easing the labor pains of a pregnant cow named Gemesin. Nanar's celestial attributes are frequently described in terms of radiance and brilliance, with significant attention given to his lunar cycle, which ancient Mesopotamians meticulously observed for omens. His association with divination is prominent in Akkadian literature, where Nanar is praised for his ability to illuminate darkness and reveal hidden truths. In his judicial role, he is often paired with the sun god Utu Shamash, as both deities are involved in issuing decrees, determining destinies, and overseeing divine justice. In the myth Enlil and Ninlil, Nanar is depicted as the firstborn son of Enlil and Ninlil, with 3 brothers, Nergal Meslamtaya, Ninazu, and Enbililu. This filial connection underscores Nanar's prominence, particularly during the Ur III period, when Ur was a significant political and religious center. Occasionally, Nanar is also portrayed as a child of An, symbolizing An's broader role as the father of all gods. Nanar's consort is the goddess Ningal, known as Nikal in Akkadian, with whom he fathered Inanna and Utu, key figures in Mesopotamian mythology. Other children attributed to Nanar include Ningublaga, Amara Azu, Amara Heia, and Numusta. His later connection with Nuska, a vizier of Enlil, suggests potential syncretism influenced by Aramaic beliefs, particularly in Haran. Nanar's primary cult center was in Ur, where the ziggurat, built by Ur-Nammu, was dedicated to him. The temple, called Ikishnugal, which means House of Great Light, had counterparts in Babylon and Nippur, reflecting his broader influence. Haran was another significant site of worship, with the temple Ihulhul, meaning House of Rejoicing, serving as a major center from the Old Babylonian period onward. His worship spread to regions like Gaesh and Urum, modern Tel Ukar, highlighting his widespread presence in ancient religious practices. Nanar's name is intricately linked with the number 30, symbolizing the 30-day lunar month. The number represents the full lunar cycle, reinforcing Nanar's deep connection to the measurement of time and the celestial order, further demonstrating his role as a regulator of both divine and human affairs. Interestingly, Nanar was the primary deity of Ur during the era traditionally associated with the patriarch Abraham, who is said to have originated from this city. This raises intriguing questions about the possible interactions between Abraham and the worship of Nanar. Could Abraham, a monotheistic figure in biblical tradition, have been familiar with Nanar's cult? The symbolism of the crescent moon, prominent in both Nanar's iconography and the later emergence of Islam, adds a layer of potential continuity. Islam's crescent moon symbol and its connection to the god revealed to the Prophet Muhammad prompts deeper speculation. Was it a mere coincidence that a deity worshipped during Abraham's time in the same region later appeared with similar lunar symbolism in another monotheistic faith? Further adding to Nanar's legacy is the naming of the Sinai Peninsula, which is thought to honor the deity Sin, Nanar's Akkadian name. The region's historical name suggests enduring reverence for the moon god, reinforcing his deep cultural and geographical impact across centuries. Both Nanar and Enki share connections with the crescent moon, although Enki's association is more symbolic, linked to his dominion over the waters beneath the earth. This shared lunar imagery could reflect deeper symbolic meanings related to wisdom, fertility, and the cycles of nature, demonstrating the complex interplay of celestial and terrestrial themes in Mesopotamian religion. Nanar's enduring legacy as a deity of illumination, fertility, divination, and justice places him at the center of both daily life and broader cosmic frameworks across ancient Mesopotamia. His possible connections to later religious developments invite contemplation of his long-standing influence and the overlapping symbols of monotheism, lunar worship, and divine justice. These studies involving academic, historical, and archaeological knowledge about the Anunnaki gods demonstrate the depth of the subject and the dedication of researchers who have worked to connect these various points that seem to form a complex puzzle, yet respond with a certain clarity to the confusion of different cults we encounter today.